It's Friday. It's time for me to cover this last article that I've been sitting on for quite some time. When you see the article, you'll see the date and you'll be like, hey, Wes, Image Comics left for Lunar like a month and a half ago. Yes, this article actually came out when I was on vacation. I was going to cover it, and it was just, I don't know, it's such a shit show. I didn't know what to do with it. I knew I wanted to talk about it, but I didn't have the energy to do it yet. Today, I'm finally going to get to it, the third part of this, just how bad comic books are. This one's called Shit Show at the Comic Book Fuck Factory, obviously an homage or a tip of the cap, if you will, to Succession on HBO, which I'm watching right now. Now, this thing is absolutely hilarious. If you don't know who Brian Hibbs is, he owns a comic book shop in San Francisco called Comics Experience. He used to have a second shop called Comics Experience Outpost, which I believe he bought from Gary from Nerdrotic. But he ended up having to sell that one, or it went out of business or something, because the comic book industry just isn't really healthy right now. And this dude has been majorly ass hurt ever since DC left Diamond and broke up their monopoly and opened up Lunar, because he thinks Lunar are stealing all their data and stuff like that, because they're also the owners of DCBS, Discount Comic Book Store or whatever, the online store where you can get heavy discounts. And he is like just fucking beside himself that DCBS and Lunar have the same owner. And he's always bitching and moaning. I guess he went on to Facebook and in one of these comic book retailer groups and started bitching, and it just came up with this enormous amount of shit. I will give some kudos out to Rich Johnston. Sometimes he actually produces some pretty good information. Obviously, he was breaking down this big, I guess, enormous argument that was going on in this retailer group. If you can get into one of these Facebook retailer groups, I suggest you don't do it, because it is an enormous waste of time. It's a lot of people bitching and stuff. But this thing is absolutely amazing, because a friend of the channel absolutely put Brian Hibbs in his place, and I thought it was amazing. And then there's some crazy other stuff that's said in there about the future of the comic book industry that it doesn't sound good. Let's just put it that way. We'll get to that. So Brian Hibbs goes into this retailer group. He's super duper ass hurt about DCBS and Lunar being the same thing, and he's really mad at Image Comics. He's like, fuck these guys. They're going to put us out of business. And then Sean Hudachko, the owner of Comics Elite and Artist Elite Comics, who publish exclusively through Lunar Comics, and obviously Sean has been on the channel once. We have Drew, who works at Comics Elite every week on the channel for the most part, and a few other people that work with Sean have been on the channel. So I will put that out there. Maybe I'm biased on this, but this is what he said to Brian Hibbs. Maybe part of the problem is you're so stuck on Lunar being the enemy because the same people own an online store. The impact DCBS has or had on me selling weekly books was zero to none. Never once did I think I'd only be doing better if it wasn't for that damn DCBS. Stop complaining about things that have zero impact on you, and maybe focus on the fact that you're barely surviving and make changes where you can control them in your business. A little bit of sanity in there. This is what Brian Hibbs said to him. Over the 34 years I have been open, we've directly had scores of customers directly and specifically say they were switching business to DCBS purely for the discount. So please believe me when I tell you that you are incorrect there. I can enumerate the losses that DCBS and half-price trades have cost us. This is not merely supposition. To which Shad said, I very quickly realized that I was not able to keep up with the massive discounts some people were offering, so I decided early on to focus my business in a different part of the comic world. I decided not to complain about it and make a change in my business. Lunar and DCBS are two different companies owned by the same people. Merc Publishing and Comics Elite are two companies ran by the same people. I promise you, Lunar is not out there plotting against you. Focus on growing your business, sir. Diamond was an enormous issue, and you will see if you go and read this thing, and you should, because it's actually somewhat entertaining. A lot of people are very excited that Image went to Lunar because they don't want to deal with Diamond anymore. But Hibbs is all butthurt because he lost his discount, and he thinks that, I guess, DCBS are like getting his customer data or something. Like, there's no proof out there whatsoever that because DCBS and Lunar are the same company, or at least they're owned by the same people, that DCBS is like looked at Lunar sales and be like, oh my goodness, look at all these sales going on in San Francisco. Let's do a lot of traffic and direct it to people in San Francisco using Facebook that are looking for comic books and say you should be using us instead of Comics Experience or anything like that. None of that stuff's happening. Now, every year they do this thing called Comics Pro, where there's like a guest speaker. Normally it's a comic book retailer, or a lot of times it's a comic book retailer. Brian Hibbs has been one of those. I believe Joe Fields has been one of those. There's been a few guys out there. They need Sean Hudachko to show up, to the fucking Comics Pro and be the keynote speaker. This dude is a retired Marine Corps Master Sergeant, and he would knife fuck the shit out of all these dudes and get them some fucking sanity back in their lives. We've seen this happening for 5 years now. If you have not adapted, if you have not adjusted your business plan to what DC and Marvel are putting out, that is on you, because DC and Marvel have told you by their actions over the past 5 years that they are not changing. They are not going to start producing comic books that are worth reading. They are not going to start producing stories that are going to drive customers into your store. And it's like Sean says, he looked at the market, he saw what was happening, he saw what Marvel and DC were doing, and he adjusted. What do they do a lot of at Comics Elite? Well, they do a lot of store variant covers, a lot of titty covers, stuff like that. Stuff people actually want to buy, because nobody wants to buy the comic books for what's actually inside it anymore. And that absolutely sucks. And I've talked to Sean, and I think he wishes it were different. But he knows what the comic book industry is, and he's adapted it because it's his business to adapt to it. He has to see what the trends are. He has to see where the future of the comic book industry is. Right now, it's speculation, and it's variant covers, unfortunately. And he gave Brian a cold dose of reality there. And I think Brian heard it. Brian's kind of I don't have anything against him. I don't know the guy, but he's kind of a whitey bitch. You know what I mean? But there was some other interesting stuff I want to get into. This is what Darren Hutchinson of Unknown Comic Books in Amarillo, Texas said. As a retailer that primarily generates sales from online, I will say I will always have issues from buying from my competitor, talking about Lunar and DCBS. But I will say adapting is what we do. We are in an ever-dying market that is comics. These publishers are having to make choices solely on the bottom line for the future of their businesses. And if Image thinks it's Lunar, I'll for sure adapt to make it work. Longevity is not a privilege. You are still required to adapt. Longevity is not a privilege. You are still required to adapt. What he's saying is it doesn't matter if you've had your comic book shop for 34 years. If you are not adjusting to the market, then you will fail. Your comic book shop will die. And that is the industry that we're in. As he stated, the ever-dying market that is comic books. I think a lot of these retailers have started to see the writing on the wall. And if you look at Darren Hutchinson's Facebook page for Unknown Comic Books, guess what he does? A shitload of store exclusive variant covers, because that's where the money is to be made in comic books right now. It's not selling weekly comic books. And unfortunately, it doesn't appear things are going to be turning around in the near future. That just doesn't look like what's going to happen. We have seen no indication that Marvel and DC are really going to turn things around and start producing comic books that a lot of people want to read. Especially Marvel. They're the key one. They are the market leader. They are the ones that drive the direct market. Without Marvel producing really high quality comic books that get people excited, things are going to continue to be in the tank. And that's just kind of the way it is. And no one's going to give you a discount on your rent. No one's going to lower your mortgage for this because DC and Marvel didn't hold up their end of the bargain. You have to see the market for what it is and understand how to make money. Brian Hibbs did respond to that, and I guess he was the cup is half full kind of guy. This one. I don't think we are in an ever-dying market that is comics inherently. I think publishers and retailers have made specific decisions that are actively murdering the market for periodicals, including the crazy reliance on variant covers and stunts. But it's super obvious from looking at Bookscan that the market for the medium of comics is going quite fine. So we went from the ever-dying comic book market to actually publishers are murdering the market. That's when you murder something. Manslaughter means maybe it was an accident. You did something you shouldn't have done, but you weren't trying to kill anybody. But if you murder something, that's completely intentional. So he's saying that DC and Marvel are intentionally killing the entire comic book market. I'm with him as far as the variant covers and stunts. All the stupid comic book events, the constant rebooting, the stupid months. Like, it's Sidekick variant cover month. Like, that's real exciting. But then what he says, if you look at the NPD Bookscan numbers, the market's actually quite robust. You've done this enough and you've looked at the numbers enough. You know the NPD Bookscan and the direct market are two different markets. One of them is the book channel, and the other one is the direct market as far as single and periodical comic books. Sure, there's some overlap as far as what you're selling. I'm sure a lot of these retailers are selling volumes of manga, and I'm sure a lot of them are selling, obviously, collected editions, graphic novels and stuff like that. But bookstores aren't selling periodics, and the primary product of the direct market really is periodics, even if it's trending a little bit different. So just because Amazon is selling a lot of graphic novels at half price, or just because Walmart's moving a lot of issues at half price, or just because people are going to Barnes and Noble and buying Dad Pilkey and manga books doesn't mean that things are quite fine in the direct market. You yourself are coming on to Facebook, into these retailer groups, and pissing and moaning incessantly because of how bad it is. Stop trying to like glass is half full that shit. And you just said that Marvel and DC are specifically trying to murder the industry when it comes to periodicals. Get a fucking clue, man. Like, oh my goodness, that's just stupid. After this, Eric Larson shows up. Now, Eric Larson, obviously, you know him. He's a Spider-Man artist, Savage Dragon. He's the CFO from Image Comics. And obviously, Image Comics leaving Diamond for Lunar was the precipice for this shit show at the Comic Book Fuck Factory. And he came out and he said, yeah, we looked at all this stuff, and I guarantee you it's not going to hurt you. And he had some funny stuff to say. And, of course, Brian Hibbs freaked out on him. This is what he said. You and I have both been through this long enough to know there's really not enough profit for periodical comics to reasonably support multiple distributors for the category. And once you remove the largest players from a profitable channel, then that just hangs the smaller players out to dry. Every buy-sell publisher at Diamond is effectively fucked, even more because Diamond no longer has the cash flow to keep their stock on hand. Finally, if I am freaking the fuck out, and I don't think that I am, it is because each and every change in distribution since DC pulled out has cost me time and thus money without selling one single more comic book. And in a case of salt in the wound, DC's choice of unjumping DCBS has enriched the retailer's competition. If you go and read this article on Bleeding Cool, or if you go to Facebook and see this argument that happened like a month and a half ago, yeah, Eric Larson was right on this one. Brian Hibbs was freaking the fuck out, but he freaks the fuck out all the time. Everything wrong with his shop is because DC Comics made the right decision to leave Diamond in the rear view and start up Lunar. The reason DC Comics did this was because Diamond Comics just decided on their own, without consulting Marvel, DC, or any publishers, to stop delivering comic books during the pandemic. They're the only reason you got comic books back to begin with, you stupid fuckwads. Like, listen to yourself, man. Think about how broke you would have been if you had nothing to sell during the pandemic. That's what would have happened if DC Comics would have sat on their asses like Marvel and did nothing. The only reason Diamond got back up and running again as soon as they did was because DC brought Lunar online. Diamond made DC do this. It's not like DC went out there and did it on their own. They were actually forced to do it. And in this shit show, Brian Hibbs is always bitching about, we have Tuesday release day and Wednesday release day. Listen, dude, it's your fucking comic book shop. If you want to release DC Comics every Wednesday instead of on Tuesday, you can do that. You actually own the shop. But he's always complained that he just doesn't have enough time. He's got to do double the work because we got to get ready for a Tuesday and a Wednesday, and now I have to order from multiple distributors. Go to the Comics Beat, and I want you to go to his Tilting at Windmills articles. Just go see the one about the book scan numbers and tell me how many fucking hours it took for that dude to write that article. I guarantee you it took him at a minimum 35, maybe 40 hours to go through all the numbers from MPD Bookscan for the entire year of 2022, categorize them, and write that entire fucking article. Stop wasting all of your time on Tilting at Windmill articles and just do the fucking ordering and get ready for new comic book day on Tuesday and Wednesday. If you have to do it, which you don't because you own the fucking shop. Just make Wednesday your release day. Sure, your competitors are going to have DC Comics on Tuesday because they don't see it as such a big deal and they'll get more customers, but hey, it's less work, I guess, and you can stop bitching about it. The last quote I want to talk about isn't Brian Hibbs. It's not Eric Larson or Shad. This one's from Phil Boyle. He owns Coliseum of Comics, a chain of stores down in Florida, I believe. He said, Wednesday warriors have been all but replaced with Wednesday speculators. Fewer people are talking about stories and are instead talking about which cover will be worth $20 on eBay. If a book specs out, we can sell out on a Wednesday. Then number two sells almost nothing without the same speculator interest. All this has caused a drop in new comic sales over the past year, yet our work ordering and tracking has tripled thanks to the fracturing of the distribution system. Obviously, Mr. Boyle and Coliseum of Comics are also not fans of having to order comic books, not only from Diamond Comics, but from Lunar, as well as Penguin Random House when it comes to some of the publishers. And things aren't good. And he's noticing that almost the entire market, as far as new comic books, is driven by speculators now. It's not driven by readers. This is because DC and Marvel drove everybody away with bad stories. Stop blaming this on Lunar Stop blaming this on Diamond and Penguin Random House and you having to fracture distribution system, whatever. You need to start blaming the real culprits of this issue. If DC and Marvel were producing good comic books, stories that were bringing people into your shop, and they couldn't wait to read them, none of this shit would be an issue. You would be making money hand over fist. And they decided to break the entire industry and tell all of your customers to fuck the fuck off. And guess what? They heard them, and they decided to leave. Sure, there are some Wednesday warriors that stick around, and thank God for those people. And hopefully the industry will turn around. That's why I have this channel. People say, Wes, you just hate comic books. Nothing could actually be further from the truth. Like Phil Boyle, like Brian Hibbs, like Sean Hodachko, like everybody else out there, I am a part of the comic book industry. I have a comic book YouTube channel. It would behoove me, and I would be very, very happy if DC and Marvel got their act together and there was actual interest in comic books. But that's not the case right now. And you have to adapt to what's actually going on. And I have to be honest. The shit show at the Comic Book Buck Factory is an absolute interesting read. Definitely go check it out for yourself. But that's what they're talking about. Shit ain't good right now. Actually, everything is pretty damn bad. Now, I did talk about Sean Hodachko and the verbal ass whooping that he gave Brian Hibbs and a lot of the retailers in that conversation. He's actually been on the channel one time. I talked about it earlier, where we talked about AI art and how they were trying to ruin the speculator market as well. Really interesting information right here that you might not know. Definitely check this video out. There's also a link in the video description.